of Indo-Pacific researchers, and to welcome you all here at today's CIPR's second international conference titled Alliances and Partnership in the Indo-Pacific, Elevating Strategies and Interest. And this panel, this is our third panel for the second day, is focused on US and Indian Ocean region with reflections on Quad, strategic priorities and partnership. And I am delighted to share this opportunity to moderate the panel with Dr. Zahid, who represents American International University, Bangladesh, and we have the knowledge partnership with the university in this conference. I would like to announce here that we started forging the partnership with the conference and the seminars. This is the first time that we are doing this partnership with the conference with the Wisconsin Veteran Museum, Wisconsin, American International University, Bangladesh, and Amity International University, Noida, India. So without further ado, my brief comment on the IOR region is very crucial for the Indo-Pacific construct due to its major waterways, choke points, and the region is home to around 2.5 billion people, or 1/3 of the population of the planet. We would like to hear from the experts on the regional priorities and their interests and how states in the region are aligned with the US Indo-Pacific partnership. We will see the questions, how our experts will put their remarks, and then we will follow the QA session. Now, before moving ahead, I would like to make an announcement that that experts' comments and panelists presented here are personal, should not be constituted to any organization, any affiliations, and institutions. Thank you so much. Dr. Zahid, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Indu. I hope you can hear me. So what I'll do is that to make best use of time, I will just straightway dive into introducing the speakers, the distinguished speakers today, and then move on from there. The first, we have Dr. Muhammad Aminul Karim, who joins us from Dhaka, Bangladesh. Dr. Karim is a prolific author and scholar on geopolitics and security studies. He's a retired Lieutenant General of Bangladesh Army. His stints as a faculty and commandant of Defense Services Command Staff College, National Defense College, and also as General Officer Commanding of an Infantry Division gives him a unique perspective and insight into today's topic. He also served in different universities as a professor, most notably in University of Malaya and also Chinese Foreign Affairs University in Beijing. Dr. Karim authored many books, journal articles, and book chapters. His most recent book was launched on April 2023, which is titled The Bay of Bengal, Geopolitics and the Quad. It's very much aligned with the topic of our discussions today. Next in the line, we also have another Army person, Major General Binoj Basnyat. You're here, sir? Yes, sir. Oh, what I could get from about you through the internet is that you are a deep thinker on geopolitics and strategic issues, a very keen reader. I can't resist telling that I find your quotes everywhere in all the literature or the interviews. I think the latest one came in the Telegraph's UK-based prominent newspaper regarding your comments on Gurkhas being recruited by the Wagner. So look forward to your comments and insights on this on today's topic. We also have, I think, Sannia, Abdulla, close. I do have something common about you when I was researching about you. You had a quite good interview with Professor Kristen Hare in your one of your podcasts. I had an opportunity to meeting her during her visit in Dhaka. So Dr. Sannia is a political scientist working on non-proliferation and regional security issues. She completed her postdoc from Stanford University and served as a faculty at the Quaid-e-Azam University, Pakistan. She also hosts her podcast, which is Women with Ambition. And I really enjoyed the talks with the one with Professor Christian Fair. It was rich in substance and presentation. And she has been part of several Track 2 dialogues. Her publications have appeared in Space and Defense, International Journal for Nuclear Security, Washington Quarterly, Asia-Europe Journal, War on Rocks. and South Asian Voices. She's currently working, I believe you're currently working on your book manuscript focusing on the evolution of Pakistan's nuclear behavior and its deterrence logic. Good luck for that. We all look forward to your comments in this session. Finally, we have a very, very acclaimed academics here, Professor Nanda Kishore, Associate Professor for Pondicherry University, India. Dr. Nanda Kishore is an Associate Professor of Politics and International Studies. He holds an MPhil and MPhD in Political Science from Hyderabad Central University. To name a few, Dr. Kishore illustrious academic career includes stints at the head of the Department of Geopolitics and International Relations, Monipol Academy of Higher Education, postdoc from University of Leiden, Netherlands, with Erasmus Mundus Fellowship, and many more. I can also, I was intrigued to see that he has at least 4 books in the pipeline. And I'm sure your recent book, Reimagining India in the Geopolitics of the 21st Century, has been, I understand this was critically acclaimed. Professor Nanda, are you here? Can you have your, Professor Nanda, can you have your camera on, please?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, sir. All right, sir. So we look forward to, we wish you a success for your upcoming books, 4 in a line. That's quite a lot of work you have in your hand. So with that introduction, just a bit of house rules. 10 minutes for each speakers. I'll try and give a warning at 9 minutes. Hopefully that will not be required. And then, of course, we will move into the Q&A sessions. I can see a lot of senior officers, including Air Chief Marshal Masir Jaman Serniabad. There's some colleagues from the AIOB and also Air Vice Marshal Hassan joining here, and Admiral Awal. If you have a question, sir, just drop it in the comments box. We can pick it up from there, or we can also connect you during the Q&A session. Thank you very much, sir. With that, may I request Dr. Aminul Karim to start your presentation, sir.
I have some slides. I can't really remember. I'll try for that.
Sir, please.
Oh, share, yeah. I hope I can do it. Oh, no. How is it going? Yeah. Oh,
has it come yet?
is it coming? Yeah, no, it is coming. Share. Yeah, it has come. Yeah, since the time is very constrained, I would say, I'll just Indu, thank you very much for the excellent initiative you have taken, and thanks to the chair for giving me the floor. And sorry, your time, I was initially 15 minutes, but it has been trimmed to 10 minutes. Anyway, I'll try to complete it as quickly as possible.
Sir,
now we'll talk about the.
Please go ahead with the 50. If you want to show your slides, please go ahead, because we don't have the panel. We have the panels in the evening. That so we can stretch it if other panelists allow that thing too.
Yeah, I'll be quick as possible. But since I made the slides, it took me a lot of. I had to put in a lot of efforts for this, but I'll just go straight away. Indian Ocean region is IOR, I'll call it. It links the economies of Europe, the Middle East, Africa, Asia, and Australia. IOR is the nexus of global trade and commerce, with nearly half of the world's 90% commercial vessels and 2/3 of the global oil trade traveling through the sea lanes. And this I'm taking from the American Department of Defense Indo-Pacific Report 2009. Now, this is Indian Ocean. You all know about that, but the problem is with the northwestern Indian Ocean. This is the problem area. Horn of Africa and the Red Sea is not included in Indo-Pacific, and that's the point we are trying to highlight. Indo-Pacific is not covered in this part of the Indian Ocean, IOR. So that's the gap we have. And the Malacca Strait, Bay of Bengal, Sri Lanka is important, Madagascar is important, and the island countries are also very important. And on the other side, South China Sea, Bay of Bengal, and so on and so Arabian Sea is important. It is part of the Indo-Pacific Arabian Sea, but not the Persian Gulf and Red Sea and other places. Okay. Now I'll just give an overview of this IOR, I think you all know about that. The point that I like to highlight is Indian Ocean is divided across US military commands and State Department's geographic bureaucracy. Like Central Command of USA, Africa Command, and Indo-Pacific Command are all covering IOR. And that's a big hassle for, what should I say, for coordination and cooperation of the Indo-Pacific policy, so to say. And we have in Indian Ocean region, we have the SLOCs, sea lines of communications, and giving easy access to the Navy's continued presence. And they patrol and secure the SLOCs both during peace and war. India is doing that, China is doing that, America is doing that, Japan is also doing that. Well, one is taking the support from the other. The Persian Gulf in the Arabian Sea also plays an equally important role, but this is beyond Indo-Pacific concept. That's the point I'm trying to highlight. Indian Navy warships are deployed in the Gulf of Oman and Persian Gulf to provide securities to their Indian flagged vessels. Over these on the Indian Ocean island territories, some of them are very important, like Maldives, Sri Lanka, Nepal is not part of that. Other smaller territories are under control of India, but Maldives and Sri Lanka are under control of China at the moment. So to say, sovereignty is compromised. I think there's something concept called shared sovereignty working here. And then we have Indo-Pacific strategy. I come to that proper. US is supposed to act in concert with the like-minded allies and partners, but it has narrowed down only to Japan, India, France, and ASEAN. I have taken it from a document. I think it's an American document. The concept of secure diamond was formulated by Japan, and it has given rise to the formation of Quad. And this diamond security concept has been converted to or culminated into the Quad. US should not leave out the developing militaries. I mean the militaries like Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and so on and so forth. China will, if we are leaving it out, China will fill the gap. That will be a threat for India, if at all. You are thinking about your security in the Indo-Pacific. The BRI is filling that gap. But from maritime perspective, India has SAGOR, Indian Ocean Reef Association, Indian Ocean Naval Symposium, Combined Maritime Force, Indian Ocean Commission, and Djibouti Code of Conduct, where there is a Chinese first ever maritime seaport. China is out of their area. But beyond, say in South China Sea, India probably cannot perform well, cannot sustain much. Indian Navy is showing propensity to come in contact with the US Central Command. Joint military exercises are in Alaska are to fight better in Himalaya. The Indian military has been trained in Alaska so that they can fight the Chinese in that north of the territory in Himalaya. Now Quad has termed. I'm putting gaps in my paragraph. It's difficult to cover everything. Now ASEAN has been taken as a center of gravity for the ASEAN because it's ASEAN centrality. But I have my doubts if ASEAN can maintain its centrality. That's debatable. I raise another question on that. Now, Indo-Pacific currently stops the western shores of India, as I said so, and it is basically discussing South Asia and particularly India. Southeast Asia and the Indian Ocean is going. America is going for agreement for leasing or berthing than basing. It's not asking for a base in this part of the world. It is asking for berthing mostly. The Indo-Pacific strategy that they have. And that said, Biden administration was given this proposal that we must include the other part of the Indo-Pacific, that is Arabian Sea and the Red Sea and so on and so forth. But the latest one, they have not covered it. But I have a hunch. US is going forward with access agreements with some of the countries. I think with Bangladesh, maybe, with Sri Lanka, maybe, with maybe some Malaysia and Indonesia, they are going for that. Now, Indo-Pacific should correct itself. It should redefine Indo-Pacific. It should develop an Indian Ocean regional program, both short-term and long-term, and execute those words into practicality. It's transform that into reality. Okay. Now, whatever extensive engagement it has basically is directed primarily to India, as I said. They have, India has nuclear collaboration with America and also with Japan. India has been successful in building trust in South Asia, has not been successful in building trust in South Asia. Well, that's my personal observation. With Japan on board, it has succeeded in the formation of the Quad. Okay. Now again, I come now. What is India doing about it? India is very important to maintain the regional balance of power. As part of Indo-Pacific program, India has fifth largest economy of the world, to the size of $3.8 trillion. Its defense budget is $70 billion, which is third largest in the world today. India and US began a strategic partnership with the signing of 10-year defense collaboration and civil nuclear deal. Civil nuclear deal is something very funny because it can turn into military. There's no point calling it civil military deal. So I always say so that is a military deal. A strong Indo-Asian partnership is vital to the Indo-Pacific strategy. US and India are now sharing information about Chinese maritime movement in the Indian Ocean. But that's a development. And they are, collecting intelligence, cold weather, and they provided cold weather gears and advanced drones in 2020 when India and China were fighting in Galwan Valley. I think my time is up. Dr. Zahid is laughing at me. The Quad dilemma, I'll just read it quickly. Today's highly integrated globalized world cannot be divided into separated economic and political groups. It is even difficult to dent the dollar predominance. Dollar will predominate. China is far from challenging it. India has befriended Japan in the Afro-Asian growth triangle. So the Quad is a natural extension of the realist approach. The Quad formation is one of the most consequential challenges to Chinese ambitions in the Indo-Pacific. Now, will the Quad be a military alliance or informal partnership? There's a question on that. That's my question. There is doubt how deeply US will get deeply involved in this. It has already an alliance relations with Japan. So I have a question on that. America, Japanese, and Australian boots are unlikely to be used in the Himalayan terrain. And Quad, how much Quad can help really? That's a big problem. The Quad is a force multiplier in the Bay of Bengal. Huge military infrastructure in the Indian ANI, Andaman Nicobar Island. Quad may become strong enough in the Bay to constrain China. Quad has created a geographic and political arc again to constrain or contain China. Okay, I've just finished. Don't worry. Now China is coming in the scene. France and India obviously includes the entire IOR, which America is not doing. China's BRI does not limit itself to the Indo-Pacific only. It is going all around in the Central Asia, in Africa, even in Europe. China is now gradually creeping into the Indian Ocean, particularly to the Bay of Bengal, in the Horn of Africa, and increasingly into the Middle East. China's first overseas base, I just talked about that, is in Djibouti. And this can be assumed that China's permanent Indian Ocean Naval Squadron and plan has naval escort task force in Djibouti. Now, Chinese submarines and research ships are regularly visiting IOR. It has undersea surveillance and exploration for seabed minerals. Sri Lanka is a routine destination. India is wary of that. Minimal arms sales or gift to Bangladesh, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. These are undergoing. The negotiation is undergoing. Now, China, I come again. China is following two-nation approach, and China has MSR, and China is building a regional cooperation with Russia and Iran, and they're calling it Marine Security Belt, and that may be a threat to Indo-Pacific strategy. Many say China is increasing its soft power in the region. I don't agree. China does not carry a good image of itself in this part of the world. There's a constant complaint that China does not follow rule-based order. I don't totally agree with that because America supported Chinese entry to the
We are
WTO.
running short of time, sir.
I'll finish it. I'll go to the reflections only. Now, in soft power, both China and India are weak in this region. Even the US lacks in soft power. US must have more engagement with all South Asian powers, irrespective of the sizes. Japan is the best soft power image in the region, a genuine development partner, gradually getting more geopolitical. Japan is competing with China over infrastructure development, especially in Bangladesh. It's a good example, deep sea port in Bangladesh. USA may not see the other smaller powers in South Asia through the prism of India. It should handle the other smaller powers in South Asia one-on-one. Okay, soft power may be enhanced through cooperation in climate change, HRD, infrastructure building, sustained democracy promotion, keeping in view the local culture and people's aspirations. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'll just take one or two points. On education cooperation, Bangladesh is doing, China is coming forward in a big way. These are soft power. I'm talking about soft power. Chinese language institutes are making good breakthroughs in South Asia and Southeast Asia. Quality of American education is much sought after in Bangladesh, and our students prefer American education or Canadian education or immigration in America or China. That's it. So those are contributing to soft power. With that, I'll end. Sorry, I had to rush it like anything, and I overshot the time. I'm sorry for that, Dr. Yeah. With that, I finished. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And
I go-
we will quick, sir. Thank you very much, sir. That was very in-depth, detailed, and also very informative. We'll come back to you during the Q&A, sir. May I now request Major General Binoj Basnyat to deliver your remarks, sir.
Good evening. Good evening. I mean, it's about almost
So I took 15
15
minutes. What is
past
that? I took
8
15 minutes.
p.m. here at Kathmandu. So it's good to be back, Dr. Indu. So let me start with, I mean, I think the 2023 commenced with the two geostrategic bearings. One is, it was the marking of the 40th anniversary of the normalizations of diplomatic relations between China and the US, but is also a year of geopolitical readjustment and maneuvering with added perceptible rivalries, as well as the finding a place for the voices of the global South, particularly China and India. And for this, summits have been a podium for influential world leaders for forging alignments and alliances, or both. Multilateral and unilateral diplomacy and multipolarity has also subsided as a confidence above all for the balance of power. So if you look at the Indo-Pacific region, like I mean, the emerging powers, the growing powers, the rising powers, Australia, India, Japan, South Korea, with the United States, have been more visual with trilateral agreements, I mean, with the Chip 4 cooperations, and the one that I will be discussing about the Quad, or also known as the Asian NATO. So the Indo-Pacific region has emerged as a crucial geopolitical area in the 21st century, giving its economic potentials, strategic location, and the security concerns. So the Quad nations have formed an alliance that seeks to maintain a rule-based order, enhanced regional stability, and promote economic cooperations in the Indo-Pacific regions. It reminds me of Graham Allison. He said, quote, "In 12 of 16 past cases in which a rising power has confronted a ruling power, the result has been bloodshed," unquote. So, but the important thing about this is, how has the four deterred or prevented war? So, like talking about, I mean, so when talking about Quad and the Indo-Pacific region, it reminds me of three geopolitical anxieties. One, it is the new world order is in the forming. Two, a rise in defense diplomacy. If you look at like most of the intergovernmental or international organizations, it always came up, most of them came up with humanitarian aspects, and now the military diplomacy has been part and parcel of almost every, including Quad. Now, and the third is alliances and alignment as a tool for political economy, political security, and political diplomacy strengths. So, talking about the origins of Quad, I think, I mean, not bringing about how it came about in 2004, I think 2021 has been an important year for its significance, when President Biden hosted in-person meeting at the White House, following an announcement at the 76th UNGA of elevating the Quad partnership. So the United States involvement is not new in the region. I mean, War has defined much of the relationship of the United States to Asia during the 20th century, from the colonizations of the Philippines to Japan, and World War II to Koreans and Cold War with China in the 1950s, to wars in Southeast Asia in the 1960s and the 1970s. So significance why? One, it is related to great power competition, as China and Russia are strategic competitors of the United States. Two, Quad with common concerns about regional security, maritime disputes, and the rise of China, which has contributed to the alignment. And on the economic, in 2023, combined GDP, nominal 36.7 trillion United States dollar, which is about 43 to 7% of the gross world product. Combined GDP PPP of 48.1 trillion USD dollar is about 27.5% of the world's GDP. So the US economy continues to outstrip China's by dollar values. In 2022, China's gross domestic product was 18 trillion compared to 25.5 trillion of the United States. So US is at the top in nominal, whereas China is at the top in PPP since 2017, after overtaking the US. And the other concerning factor is the military buildup of China and its capabilities, and the technological advancement. Like if you look at what the formations of the orders in the world, it has a multiple axis. It's not just security. It is security, it is economy, and the most important is digital technology. So the Chinese advancements in technology, these are all aspirations of China's being a global player. So Quad is more involved in security, whether it is environment, health, or physical, on political as a for free and open rule-based order, and technology or digital. So this is all for economic, security, and strategic supply chain. Therefore, diplomacy is and around, and it's a paving way for Quad Plus when New Zealand, South Korea, and Vietnam joined. So the possibility of more countries joining the Quad in the future cannot be ruled out. But it is a geopolitical dynamics, alignment of national interests, and a willingness of potential new members to commit to the objectives and principles of the Quad. So it is important to note that Quad is still in its early stages of development, and its current members are focused on strengthening its cooperations and building trust. Now, the other point that I brought out was about defense diplomacy. So if you look at the Malabar exercise that happened in August 2022, it started with the India and the United States in 1992. So it has been building up, and there has been a regular military exercises. So when it stopped, when the Quad started with the humanitarian, now it's converting itself into slowly a defense. So the military influence or the defense influence in the US. So in Quad, so what are the commonalities? So what are the commonalities? So one is security and defense. So the Quad serves as a avenue to enhance security cooperation. It is for regional stability, Indo-Pacific region, which is crucial for economic and strategic interest. It is economic interest and opportunities, for economic implications. It is a strategic partnership to strengthen its relationship with important regional powers. It is countering the autocratic system or the values of democratic system influence with shared values and interests. It is balancing regional power dynamics, like India's involvement in Quad helps balance regional power dynamics, particularly in the context of China's assertiveness behaviors. So by aligning with other Quad members, India has counterbalanced China's influence. The other is, Indo-Pacific influence for India to expand its influence in the Indo-Pacific region as India seeks increased in global stature. The Quad provides a platform. And the other is countering China's influence for Japan and the East Asian countries to collectively address China's growing influence, particularly in the South China Sea. And the other is technological innovations and connectivity, which is so important for the formations of the new order. And the other is strategic hedging. Like if you look at Australia, Australia's participation in the Quad helps it diversify its strategic partnership and reduce over-reliance on any single country. And the other is enhanced regional influence, Australia's involvement also in this. So, I mean, so there are a lot of commonalities which has brought the Quad nations together, particularly but challenges exist and criticisms are there. So what are they? One of the primary challenges is managing the diverse strategic priorities and regional dynamics among the member nations. While they share common interest, there are differences in terms of threat perceptions, historical conflicts, and geopolitical aspirations. Another challenge seems from the varying degrees of commitment among the member countries. The level of dedications and strategic investments may differ as each country assesses the risks and opportunities in the Indo-Pacific region. Further, China's opposition in Quad remains a significant hurdle, being views the alliance as an attempt to contain its growing influence and undermine its regional ambitions. And the other critics of Quad argues that it risks it looks exacerbating tensions and accelerating arms race in the Indo-Pacific region. I mean, they contend that increasing militarizations of the alliance could further escalate regional conflicts and hinder diplomatic solutions and economic prosperity. So these are generally the things I wanted to speak today, which would I think further provide space for question and answers or anything. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That was very thoughtful and also very profound in terms of strategic hedging by Australian. I think there are some articles on that as well. But obviously, you also raised some good questions and good points, which we can sort of deal during the question and answer session about how do you visualize that in the Quad we have two partners, one partner and the other two is our allies, Japan and Australia. So how does the mix work, and also what new world order we envision with the Quad being in the regional mix? We'll come to that during the Q&A and hold that thought. And now may I invite Dr. Sannia Abdulla close, please, to make your deliberation. Dr. Sannia, please. Sannia, you're here?
We can invite Dr. Nanda if Sannia is.
Yes,
No, Sannia
I'm here.
Yeah, Sannia
I'm
is
here.
here. Yes, please. We want to hear Dr. Nanda at the end. Yes.
Thank you
Yes, all
so
right.
much for your very generous introduction. I will be trying to share my slides, and it will, I think, give more perspective about what I'm trying to capture here from my notes. If you could see my slides. Can
Yes.
you?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much. So I'm actually trying to give a perspective about Pakistan's threat perceptions in these emerging alliances, which is primarily Indo-Pacific and also Quad. And my presentation is more generic in terms of how Pakistan is viewing US-China rivalry and how they are trying to navigate those tough waters. I will begin with basically Pakistan's threat perceptions, how Pakistan perceives Quad and emerging partnerships. The major perception that my academic analysis has come to conclusion is that Pakistan is finding itself in a very tough spot in terms of finding strategic relevance among these emerging partnerships. Now, there are two reasons for that. One, that US-India defense cooperation, which has been going on for over a decade, is very unnerving for the Pakistan military, particularly with respect to maritime and naval security. And another important fact is how Pakistan is really seeing it as an irritant factor, that US and China tension is really taking up its space. And why it is irritant for Pakistan? Because Pakistan in the past have tried to benefit from both of those powers in a different capacity. It was an ally of the US time to time. There was some disturbances in the relationship, but overall, Pakistan was a great recipient of the US military and economic assistance. On the other hand, Pakistan always used China's diplomatic support, also military support in instances with its conflict with India. So now if Pakistan has to choose one over the other, that's something that Pakistan's policymakers are really struggling with that. So security or foreign policy puzzle, I would say, that Pakistan is facing is, can a non-US ally, Pakistan, which is right now it is, sustain its rivalry with India, who is getting more and more powerful in the region and beyond, without any cooperation from the United States? And second important troubling factor is, can Sino-Pakistan cooperation to some degree entangle India in regional conflicts? Can Pakistan ever do that? And how far Pakistan could be successful? Now, given just a very brief point of view of how Pakistan's foreign policy revolves around, I see this as a very narcissistic approach, which is also a judgment of error coming from Pakistan. And that is that they always think Pakistan is a pivotal state in the region. And seeing that, Pakistan's entire foreign security policy revolved around that conundrum. So we have I gave three perspectives: a foreign diplomat, Pakistan's Lieutenant General Kidbai, who has been an advisor of national security, and then we have a senior academic, and they all talk about this fact that Pakistan is a pivotal state in the region, and Pakistan has to be considered by the other great powers of the time. So we have Shahid Raja, who says Pakistan is a pivotal state and the friendship is crucial for any global power interested to further its foreign policy objectives. General Kidbai says it's a pivotal regional country and cannot be ignored for too long. And then we have an academic reverberating the same argument, which says its geostrategic location has made this country of pivotal importance from the Cold War to the present day. Now, why is this perception coming from? The perception is coming from the fact that there are three historical evidences that Pakistan benefited from. One was the Soviet-Afghan War, where Pakistan was a close ally of the United States, which Pakistan actually offered itself during that time. Then we have post 9/11 world with a big change in the world, and Pakistan again came in the forefront of the United States to be an ally. And now we also see that in the new world order, which is in the shape, Pakistan is basically an important part of China's Belt and Road Initiative. So these are the arguments that historical evidence that gives this perception that Pakistan cannot be ignored, and we will keep reaping the fruits of the alliance partnerships. Well, this is not entirely the case, and my argument over here is that future South Asian crisis could be more riskier than it has been in the past. And the reason I'm making this very bold judgment is because India's confrontation is more likely with China, and in that, United States would be a very strong partner of India, and Pakistan will challenge India's regional status by being in support of China. And the reason is twofold. One is that Pakistan's leadership has now less fear of disappointing Washington. And the reason for that is because Pakistan has no direct stakes involved, which is the economic and military insistence that Pakistan has been taking from the United States for too long. And then another important factor is US, which is now a key factor or part of the Quad, has lost its political clout over time to be an influential third-party mediator, as it was in the past in enforcing nuclear restraint in South Asia. So now with the US role, which is not a third-party mediator, is more part of the South Asian or Southern Asian problems, it would be difficult for United States to limit Pakistan's options as they have done in the past. And what evidence do we have in support of that? We have that the past four crises of India and Pakistan, 2001 to 2008, we saw there was an escalation in the conflict and the crisis brewed up, and we saw that US pressure, diplomatic pressure, was very profound. In the first crisis, US pressured General Musharraf to give a statement denouncing cross-border terrorism, in which General Musharraf gave, and the crisis de-escalated because that gave some satisfaction to India that Pakistan is going to take care of the bad guys at their end. In 2008, US Secretary then, Condoleezza Rice, and British Prime Minister visited India and Pakistan to reduce tension, and the crisis de-escalated after some assurances. In 2016 Uri crisis, we saw that the US diplomatic pressure went on the backstage. There was a silence on the US diplomacy, and that also encouraged Indian decision makers to take plans for the punitive measures and target militant safe havens across the line of control. And we saw India conduct surgical strikes too. In 2019, this was a much further step ahead, and we saw that US National Security Advisor back then, John Bolton, said, America supports India's right to self-defense. And the consequence was the crisis escalated. Indian Air Force crossed the line of control, and there were airstrikes, and then Pakistan retaliated and downed Indian aircraft and captured the pilot. So step by step, we are going up the escalator, both countries, because the tolerance is really diminishing away, and there is no important third party who is influential enough after US being part of this key factor emerging alliance or multilateral alliance that can take that place, and China cannot take that place because China is another party in the conflict. So as we could see that how Pakistan is being given importance in the Belt and Road Initiative of China, a special route is being created where Pakistan was needed as such to further China's interest, to give another route, which is CPAC, towards the seas, which China could have actually done through the ports, other ports in the region, but Gwadar has to be created an important area or a foothold in the sea, and Pakistan was looped into it by design, as you can see from this slide. Where we go forward from this, return of containment, US-China rivalry, and an important factor we all know after these emerging alliances, that the emphasis is on China, how to contain China. And this is not first part of the US strategy. They have done that with the Soviet Union. But this time containing China is difficult because China has economic interdependence with European partners as much as it has with other countries, which is United States and India. So how US is going to do that? It requires a broad spectrum approach, which obviously includes defense, technology, space, and all levels of cooperation that we have also seen in terms of defense agreements. Now, the other bloc, which is anti-US bloc or Quad or Indo-Pacific, which is China's friends bloc. And what are those friends doing? That rival bloc is very weak in that way. It is less defined, more informal, less structured, and militarily less powerful than its competitors' bloc. And this is the worry of China. Apparently, the countries that seem to be part of it, that will provide some kind of help, includes Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Central Asian states, some of them, Turkey, North Korea, Iran, and probably Russia. And Pakistan, sorry.
Just a gentle reminder for the time, please.
Yes, I will be just winding up. Thank you. And while this is an important factor that China is going to be envisioning itself as another important actor, Pakistan is not a good strategic bet to open up this rivalry with. I do see that we have seen a new phase of cooperation with China, and I'll not go into the deep slide of it. It is that Pakistan's cooperation with China is again full spectrum, that basically China is investing in Pakistan to become another external balancing to nudge India from the region. My very last slide is how future crisis looks like. I see that Pakistan is very uncomfortable with the emerging partnerships. Pakistan establishment could not accept the US demands, especially when it is in the interest of closely aligning with India. And I do see that Pakistan and India could be the potential front runners of India-US-China rivalry, where they will be entering into some kind of conflict. Thank you. And I'll address that in the future question and answer sessions. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I think you make some very bold assertions, and your presentation is also rich with data and some key points, like although Pakistan is a pivotal state from a strategic point of view that you make, but we do see that it has not been included in the regional mix like the SAARC and the other organizations where because of the India-Pakistan rivalry, we do see some kind of isolation. So we'll come to that, how it works in the regional security complex. But let us just go to our star speaker today, Dr. Nanda Kishore, please, sir. and with that, we'll also wish you good luck for your upcoming books. Sir, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the generous introduction. I'm certainly not a star speaker. I heard all the veterans speaking. You yourself are there. My special thanks to Dr. Indu for having me here. Just very quick points so that there is more time for discussions and other things. I'm keeping it very, very specific to India and the United States in the Indian Ocean region. More specifically, the issues that are associated with Quad, because I think the turning point for India as such becoming important for the United States was 9/11. Till then, the United States always thought that terrorism is only the problem that was existing elsewhere, and then it thought that the problems between India and Pakistan were just sort of bilateral, and there were some sort of incursions and other things. It never accepted it to be a major issue. But perhaps after that one, I think the other major event I see is the Indian Ocean tsunami. This is perhaps the time where it started going beyond the ad hoc relationship with India being also a nuclear state. I think it gave shape to something that we're talking about. I think one of the speakers spoke about the nuclear component that India and the United States share. But in terms of looking at the bilateral relations, which India always had thought and thought it as the most important one, if you look in the way the United States has brought together, in fact, that's where I want to credit the United States being a state that has brought the the Japanese and the Australians along with India. Now, one of the common components that whether we accept or not that has brought us together is China's military. And that's the one which has pulled all those people to come together. There's a requirement to either we say contain or we say collaborate, or we want to do anything. Perhaps that was the one which came in. I think thanks to the other crisis that came in, which is essentially the Doklam standoff. I think here where India also thought that it should have a little more greater presence in the Quad, because India was very, very hesitant to speak up and say that I just cannot accept what you're doing to China, because the initial years of Modi and Xi Jinping sounded very, very positive, and there were visits, and then there was a lot of cementing of relation because of Prime Minister Modi having sort of a relation with China for a very, very long time. Now, unfortunately, when this started happening and Beijing started behaving much more aggressively, and that was also visible in the South Asian states, more specifically in the Indian Ocean region, India had no other option but to come into one or the other sort of grouping, though not threatening as such, but there was a necessity to do this one. Now, though India did not speak up directly and say that China is a problematic force, or it would be the whole Quad is against China, but there were one or the other way sort of behavior that we were able to see to an extent which was making it clear that India has its own strain with China, and then it's been burdened. Now, not just that factor, India also accepted Australia as a very important partner in the Malabar naval exercise, which previously also included US, Japan, and India in the late 2020. But it also elevated the Quad interaction to the summit level involving the highest leadership. That's also very important. Now, as a first, we also see in 2021, we had the Quad gathering, releasing a joint statement, which was very, very important, because a lot of people keep asking this question that where is Quad heading to? Is there any sort of clarity in terms of what objectives they want to achieve? What are they going to do in all this thing? But at the same time, I think every now and then a crisis is also an opportunity, but at the same time, there might be newer types of crises that may emerge. And that's exactly where we have seen for the first time when we thought about bringing a lot of ambitious plans, which included vaccine diplomacy, infrastructure development, maritime security, critical technologies in the cyber world. That's much more important. We live in an era where from cognitive wars to all sorts of wars are being played on each other. So for the first time, I think in 2023, Quad gave some sort of a direction, specifically in the Indian Ocean region and to the Indo-Pacific, saying, or it referred to Russia-Ukraine war and dissuaded the use of threat or use of nuclear weapons, which was also another fear that people had. Now, when Quad leaders met on the sidelines of the G7 summit in Hiroshima, if we remember, and most of us, because we follow Indo-Pacific very closely, I think there was this push for the maritime domain awareness, which is also called as the IPMDA, which was very, very important because that's something that India has been looking for a while now, though India was having a lull for a very, very long time with regard to the maritime domain awareness and everything. I think this is also another reaction and subsequently sort of action reaction cycle that we see, essentially because of the PLA Navy's increasing presence in the Indian Ocean, more so the type of relationship that it was sharing with Sri Lanka. But beyond this one, I think what it also spoke about was very interesting. There was discussion on combating illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, which is also something that India has been worried for a very, very long time. But all these progresses that we see and the importance that has been attached to the Indian Ocean for both India as well as the United States, because the United States, for that matter, these days would want to call itself as a resident power in any part of the world. That's why perhaps it's called as the superpower. But at the same time, one cannot ignore the United States and do, because I keep asking this question to my students as well. Imagine a world where there is no United States. At the same time, I also ask, imagine a world where there is no Russia, where there is no, let's say, China, where there's no India. I think it's sort of a vacuum that it would create. I think all of them have their own value. All of them have their own contradictions. All of them have their own ways of looking at certain problems and other things. Now, there are certain divergences and there are also convergences with regard to the Quad itself or the members of the Quad itself. What I see of late that's emerging is they being divergently convergent. That's what I observe these days, because on certain issues, that's how our Minister for External Affairs has been speaking so clearly that on issues we come together where there is no possibility, instead of speaking openly about it and then condemning each other, we keep a silence, which is much more important, because silence in international relations is much more powerful than making statements. That's been observed for a very, very long time, and India is no exception to that one. So India believes in this type of the type of complexities that are existing, and we acknowledge that, apart from being very, very active on the bilateral front as well as the minilateral partnership that we are trying to look at. Now, in terms of the compatibility, yes, there are issues, there are divergent points that are always there, which are priority for each of the country, and we would want some sort of a Lakshman Rekha, or we would want some sort of a line that has to be drawn where something is domestic and where something is not. And India has been super clear about it. That's where our Minister for External Affairs has openly spoken to even Europe and said that Europe's problem is not the world's problem. It's not everybody's problem, and Europe needs to realize this one. I think that's applicable to every country, irrespective of whether it's a superpower or it's a major power or it's any sort of power, because in international relations, we don't know when who becomes very, very important. Now, at the same time, when we say that even the Indian Ocean region has to be governed through the rules-based international order, but at the same time, there is the specific threat that India faces or constantly sees, the Chinese violating that one. Or Chinese would want to say that we are not violating, we're playing the game according to our rules, maybe because they don't really agree with anybody else's rule, because they have this smart way of telling anything that you come up with, they will say with Chinese characters, because they can essentially tell that this is something that I've done. Yeah, that is the Chinese character. Perhaps that's the way they've been surviving for a long time. Now, when India has spoken about this, at the same time, it is trying to manage Russia as well, along with the United States. There's no doubt about it. Because there where I think India is categorically stating that Quad is not directed against any one country, and it is also wary of projecting it as an anti-China grouping. But at the same time, it also believes that signaling is very important, and that signaling cannot actually go lull, and that signaling cannot actually be weaker. Now, India has been tilting towards the West for a very, very long time. There's no doubt about it. And we have always believed in that one. Nobody knows why exactly. Maybe it is the Anglosphere or it might be something else. But whatever the case is, at the same time, the multi-alignment posture that India has been speaking about is also to do with its strategic autonomy component, which is somebody can even say that's an obsession that India is going through. But whatever the case is, so far India has effectively managed the balance that in its relations with odd grouping, whether you have SUO where you have China, you have the Quad where the United States is there. India is also a very, very close follower of Japan, and India wants to push that very strongly. Now, but India's traditional areas of interest lay in the Indian Ocean, because that's where it thinks that it needs to have predominance, and it also wants even the United States to treat it as an equal partner and then talk to it and then convey whatever it wants to whenever it is trying to do something in the Indian Ocean region. Now, essentially, now keeping all these things in the mind, whether it's an issue of Taiwan, whether it is Ukraine, all these trajectories will certainly have some of the other sort of influence on Quad's engagement in terms of traditional security issues itself, is what I see. But at the same time, these differences that are existing, I think there's very clear understanding in the Quad about the freedom of navigation or the maritime order, or for that matter, even the Convention on the Law of Seas, because without this, these four cannot operate, and this is very, very important. And all the issues of SEZ to everything. Now, what I essentially want to highlight here is that India and the United States strategic and security ties are not perfect. There's no doubt about it. But I think from being what Dennis Cox used to say at one point of time, estranged democracies, we have become engaged democracies in the Indian Ocean region itself. And we don't have that sort of competition with each other, but rather I see some sort of a complementarity that has come into the behavior itself. Now, there is no doubt that in terms of the power asymmetry, the United States will continue to dictate their ear every now and then. But again, it depends on the type of leadership that United States will have. But this may also affect the orientation of the Quad from a security perspective, no doubt about it. But however, the differences are likely to, or unlikely to, impede the incremental progress in terms of, because whenever there are some issues here, either the Quad balances it, or when the Quad is in some sort of an issue, the bilateral relation manages it. Somehow, what we say is that there's no single way of telling about how India and the United States are managing themselves in the Quad or their own bilateral relationship in the Indian Ocean region. But one thing is clear, that India and the United States both want to engage here, expand the scope of the Indo-Pacific, and bring more and more people together. But at the same time, it's very, very important. India is a different nation altogether as of now. It's a much more confident sort of a country. That's precisely why I say the United States and even others, all the other countries, have to remember that they're dealing with an India that is coded with 3 C's, which I call as confident, the cautious, and third one, which is very, very important, which has been acknowledged of late, is courteous India. It's not anymore sort of a cutthroat national interest that it tries to put up. It's more of an enlightened national interest that it tries to say. If India is not taken here, which is seen also from France to everybody sees it as sort of power that is capable of engaging all the divergences that are existing in international system, more so specifically in the Indian Ocean and in the Quad itself, there would be a disastrous situation, which I perhaps would end with Karl Hoscheffer's statement. He says, if an empire could arise with Japan's soul in China's body, that would be a power which would put even the empires of Russia and the United States in shade. Thank you for your patient listening.
I think that was a fabulous way to conclude our formal part of the presentation. Now I can see there are a lot of questions that's coming on in the chat box. Do we have? Do you have this? Would you like to make the question by yourself, or do you want me to read it out, sir? There is a question from, I think, Associate Professor Farhana. Are you here, Farhana? Would you like to pose your question by yourself, or do you want me to? Farhana froze. All right, let me just put it. Yeah.
Dr. Jahid, we have Arudra Singh here. Arudra, go ahead with your question, and then we will take the. Please, audience, if you want to speak up your questions, to particular panelists, please go ahead.
Yeah, we'd like to give that to the audience.
Arudra, go ahead.
So yeah, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So first of all, Dr. Kishore, really wonderful and thorough presentation. So my question would be, so as we know that US Indo-Pacific strategy clearly states that we want to strengthen the international system and, update the region, the Indo-Pacific region to meet the 21st century challenges. So my question, and it also emphasizes on the climate crisis repeatedly. So my question is, while we know that Quad came out, as you said, that about the Indo-Pacific Maritime Domain Initiative, and it also took some climate change related capacity building initiatives. But do you think that Quad has, lived up to that US Indo-Pacific strategies commitment, wherein the Quad as a mechanism, regional mechanism, has been able to meet has been able to deliver as far as the Indian Ocean region is concerned too, so that the countries in the region can meet its contemporary 21st century security challenges, which are like mostly in the non-traditional maritime domain, right from IUU fishing to piracy and drug trafficking. So like my question is, how far do you think Quad has aligned its priorities with the challenges facing the Indian Ocean region states?
Should I answer, Chair?
Yeah,
Chair
yes, Dr.
permits, then
Nanda.
I will.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Nanda,
Okay.
go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Singh, for that question. The problem that I see is from the very beginning, I think there was no clarity on what exactly the Quad wants to achieve. United States wanted it to be a forum for opposing China and containing China. Australia wasn't very comfortable till the COVID-19 happened, where it started becoming a little more confident and started speaking against China. Japan has been very vocal, but Japan is also sort of a security dilemma that's been existing for a very long time because of the maritime disputes to everything. And Japan wants an outright condemnation of China, which was also not a possibility. Whereas India did not itself wanted the whole forum to be some sort of an anti-China forum. That's exactly what the United States and Japan wanted to push across. Now, that aggressive expectation from China from the United States was understandable. But problem is India shares its boundary, border, and frontier with China, which United States doesn't. And on a daily basis, India cannot afford to have fights on all the fronts. Already we face from our dear friend country on one side, and then you have China troubling on the other side, and then overall expectations in South Asian situation, in the Indian Ocean itself. When you do something, people would say India is trying to behave like a big brother. When it doesn't do, it says India doesn't behave like a responsible player, or India doesn't have the capacity to be that great part. Both, it's a very complicated situation in which India was operating. Now, perhaps one of the other complications that I also see here is on a lot of fronts, we don't have commonalities. We said that Quad has come together because of democracy as a value. But over a period of time, if you look in the democracy in all the four countries, it's been up and down. And every now and then, United States or some of the organizations or some of the funded agencies there would want to comment on the quality of democracy in India. Now, that's an antithesis. You tell first, because of democracy that we have come together, and then on a regular basis, it takes dig at the democracy in India or elsewhere. Now, that's a problematic scenario because what has to work at the peripheral level would not work at the core. This is another problem that I see here. And there is also complex interdependence that I see, even if you want to bring in some of the players within the Quad, there's going to be a problematic scenario that every now and then it emerges within the Quad itself, because let's say something like Russia, Ukraine, and India would, the expectation from the United States again is to speak up very vocally about what the Russians are doing and condemn it. But India would not want to do this one. Now, that's a problem for Australia, that's a problem with Japan, that's a problem with for United States. Now, this is what I said. They have their own divergences, they have their own domestic compulsions, and they have their own politics to be played, which they will perhaps cover it up in the form of, let's say, strategic autonomy. Now, this is what happens when newer problems or surprises start coming up in international relations, because none of us imagine that in the 21st century, that too in the third decade or the beginning of the third decade of the 21st century, that we will have these type of wars that are happening. That's Ukraine and Russia. Now we are seeing Israel and Hamas, which is going at the next level. I think these are the surprises that some of these groupings have not anticipated, and they're not prepared as well. Another sticky wicket is also on climate refugees, or those of them who are displaced because of climate. India is not a party to the 1951 convention. India is not party to several other things, but India's records are impeccable. But the United States would expect that India will ratify, India will become part of that, and then it starts accepting refugees and other things. Anything on those discussions, again, it becomes very, very problematic. Now, these are the problems that I see, due to which Quad hasn't been able to live up to the expectation in terms of deliverables. This is what I said. There are tangible, intangible outcomes. Perhaps in the intangible outcomes, it's able to make tangible outcomes. When we start listing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think it'll have very, very less to offer. So it has just remained in that way, but they're trying to take it forward. I think it's moving towards becoming more concrete, from climate change to maritime domain awareness to the fishing to everything. It's been able to talk these days. At least that's moving towards a positive direction. But in the beginning, I think for 3 to 4 years, I think it was absolutely clueless of where it is heading to. Other than China, there was nothing else to offer. That's my submission. Thank you.
Can I just add a little bit on the Quad and the climate?
Yes, please.
I mean, as I told in my speech, I just about the Quad. I think I presume it is at the beginning of things happening in the Indo-Pacific. So after the COP27 and the Indo-Pacific nations being vulnerable for climate crisis, I think there is a need for the global power as well as the coordinations, the rising powers in the Indo-Pacific region to look into. So I think there has been a focus by the coordinations from a year ago on mitigating a climate crisis. So you can see the shift. But I mean, there is still need to say. I mean, it's just been a year, so there is a shift coming up. But I think it may be for the United States and the other countries, other 3 countries, to look into the issues of climate crisis in the Indo-Pacific.
Right. Thank you.
Can
Thank you.
I say
Yes,
one
sir.
sentence? One
Yes,
sentence, yeah. Yeah, I heard Dr. Nanda and General Binoj on Quad. My impression about Quad, I published a paper on this, is that ultimately it's going to be a defense alliance like Japan and US. These are all cover up. That's how I believe it. That's the finding in my book or in my paper. It is basically dealing with the hard politics. Ultimately, that's how I look at it, and the target is China in the long run. Thank you.
All right. With that, do we have any questions from the audience, please? Anyone from the audience? All right. Let me just put as you formulate your question. I was just thinking one particular thoughts from each one of you to come forward with that. Obviously, the discussion sort of boils down to one aspect of Quad being taking a realistic view of a hard sort of security, but there is also a dimension of planetary realism, as the Major General Basnyat was telling, that it relates to climate change, it relates to existential threats, which is more prominent, of course, traditional. It is obviously put as a non-traditional security threats, but that is more existential. Do you see that the whole school of thought in the realist school is going to change in making a room for sort of planetary realism, which is sort of a new trend coming up, with some scholars calling that a more enlightened perspective of civilizational priorities should be thinking about planetary realism instead of the realism that we play with the interstate relationship. So what are your thoughts on that scale of understanding the international relations as it stands now and what it could become in a future on a civilizational scale? Anyone, sir? Dr. Nanda?
Yeah, I think, Dr. Khan, I think that's a good point. So, Zahid, you have brought out a very good point. I agree what you're saying. Planetary realism, existential theory, fine. Climate change and human habitation and migration and climate refugee and climate injustice and you name anything. The problem in the Bay of Bengal, the pollutants in the Bay of Bengal, the dead zone in the Bay of Bengal, and henceforth. But at the end of the day, the Quad has a program for this. Fine, that is okay. But I will just read the first sentence of the Quad. It is saying, we will deal with the shared security and prosperity. Prosperity part is okay. And it says that we'll look for a free and open Indo-Pacific, which is also inclusive and resilient. You see, it starts with that. And then it comes to climate change. Then it comes to technology. Yes, it talks about cyber security. It talks about space security. It talks about also infrastructure. And they have allocated about $600 billion for infrastructure development. That money has to come from the private source. When it is going to come, that's unknown. And now America has got entangled in Middle East. God knows when it is going to come. So that's a good point. That's fine. But at the end of the day, the AUKUS is going to join with the Quad. The nuclear submarines are also working there. The nuclear submarine technology has been transferred to Australia. The British are going to come over here. And, so there's a problem. But I think there was a question on if there's a rule-based war, then rule-based world, then it should not be any problem. We should all live in peace and harmony. But that's not happening. That's not happening. Because human beings or nation states are by nature brutish and selfish and, short-lived. Something like that. It comes back to that. Well, that's my personal way of looking at things. 1 minute agree. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Any other panelist?
Doctor,
If you have, yes.
oh, yeah, go ahead. Please, any other panelists want to answer this question? Then we have the Brigadier Sajad's question there. Yes, Anna.
I will also.
Sure.
Sannia, please go ahead.
I have my 2 cents here after listening to Professor Nanda, Kishore too. I think it also goes and stretches back before. There are 2 perceptions about India's policy. One is that is clearly reverberated by Nanda as well, that India is a very cautious, responsible actor and is still dragging its feet in the non-alignment. That's still the essence of India's foreign policy, and it's just not going to move out of that. But there is a perception in the US and other countries, and clearly Pakistan, who does not view this as the part of India's policy anymore, is that this is the polite diplomatic posture that is coming from India. And then there are others who in the US feel that India cannot keep having its cake and eat it too. If it is going to be a partner with the US, that's how India is going to act with us as partners in containing China. And granted that so far, India has been very successfully balancing BRICS and Russia deal of S-400 and being in the cooperation with China and US, it is still very frustrating for people in the US to understand, can India really maintain that kind of posture in the future? Can India really stay itself out of the conflict when other great powers are literally looking towards India and investing in India for the next 10 years?
Major General Basnyat, your comment, please.
All right. I think when you look at the Hey, Mike. Okay. So when you look at the geostrategic environment of the Indo-Pacific region, I think we have to examine what had happened with the starting of the Cold War. I mean, if you look at the analogy of what happened in Cold War and what is happening now, it gives a resemblance of the similarities or the analogy of things happening in the Indo-Pacific region that is leading to Cold War 2.0 or Cold War CW2 or whatever. So I think this being in the back of the mind, like let's say the 1950 Korean War in the Indo-Pacific region was the beginning of a hot war was the beginning of the Cold War, which happened, which was centered in Europe. Now the Russian aggression in Ukraine can be the same. So the analogy of the hot wars, and the other is the one in the Persian Gulf. The Israeli, the Hamas attack there can be similarities, or can also be an analogy of things that might happen in Taiwan Strait, or like the Cuban crisis in 1962. So these are factors that lead. So when we look at the Indo-Pacific region, I think we are looking into, when we look into Quad, it's just not just Quad, there are other sub-regional and regional organizations that is sprouting out. But at the same time, it is not just, it is against, it is to counter the political, economic and security influence that China is creating to be a global power. So I think these are things that we must look into and see how countries interested. Like when I brought up in my script about the similarities of things happening. Now the 14 countries around China, surrounding in the continental, and if you talk about like the non-alignment movement and the non-alignment policy that existed, do you think it will still exist now? So I think all of these things, the history of Europe history in the Cold War, and must be examined and see what may turn out in the Indo-Pacific region when Cold War II is on stride. So, my feeling would be it's not just the and the climate, the environment, and the climate issue is as important as other issues in the coming up decades. So I think these things will have to be examined. That's why the Quad has come up more into existence, or more into playing once President Biden invited everyone in the White House and started the campus. So I think this will stride on, and the cooperations between the United States and other like-minded countries will increase more. Not finding space for non-alignment movement. I don't think I don't agree that non-alignment movement would really be as it was before, because the influential players then are into some sort of alignment now. So I think we'll have to look into all of this. But yes, I do agree that climate is as important. Climate crisis is as important as the other aspects of security challenges in our region. Yeah.
All right, Brigadier General Sajid, you had a question. You're not audible. Can you just unmute, please? Please unmute yourself. You're not audible.
He wrote the question on chat. Can we go ahead with that question?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Right. First of all, thank you to everyone. I am really highly benefited out of your discussion. My question, especially the very objective of formation of Quad, Indo-Pacific strategy, and BRI, all are very benign, absolutely very well articulated. These are all made for the stable and prosperous country, those who are around the Indo-Pacific or around Indian Ocean. So if we consider about the BRI, then it consists about 145 countries. And if we consider the countries around Indo-Pacific, is about 40 to 42 countries. The investment that China has made, actually that has put, because many of the countries, those who are part of BRI, is the participants of Indo-Pacific strategy. So it is indirectly putting a pressure by this strategy on those countries, those who have already part of BRI. So it is creating a security concern for those small countries. At the same time, those who are the permanent member of Quad, after formation of AUKUS, they are also feeling some bit of suffering from some bit of deprivation. So actually, the Quad is also not completely highly committed their objective as well. So the geostrategic competition that is taking place between China and USA, it is putting pressure, creating security concern in the Bay of Bengal. At the same time, across the shore, beside those countries, small countries. So actually how those small countries will find out the opportunity out of both this BRI and Quad or Indo-Pacific strategy. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And with that, I will actually tie another question from the panel here, from the comment box from Pritam. Pritam, his question is, how is India keeping a balance in remaining a part of various groups being with China, like that of SCO BRICS, and also a part of that group, what China calls as the ASEAN NATO? Another question, of course, he adds is, if Quad was really important to the US, then why was it a requirement for the US to come up with something like AUKUS, a group focused on the Indo-Pacific? All right, so anybody can start, sir, to the panelist.
Yeah, can I, Sajid, thank you very much. It's a very good question. I think it's a very good question. The challenge for these smaller countries, because one is coming from the Quad and the other is coming from BRI, and then the Indo-Pacific, and then you have AUKUS and ASEAN, NATO, and Cold War, and so many things. So it's a big challenge for the smaller country like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and say Malaysia, Thailand, and so on and so forth. An excellent question. And we are in a problem. We are in a fix. Smaller countries are in a fix. Non-alignment is a foregone conclusion. There's nothing called non-alignment anymore. India is strongly bonded with America. As far as I understand, the military cooperation between India and America is quite extensive. Military cooperation between India and Japan is quite extensive. Military cooperation between India and Australia is quite extensive. China is coming up in a big way. That's perfectly all right. Now, in BRI, they are spending more than $2 trillion. Can you imagine? They have already spent more than $2 trillion already. China has spent that money. Now, India says that at the end of the day, the BRI will turn out to be a garrison project. They have used the word garrison project, means it will turn into a military project. They will have ports and cities and infrastructure. Those will turn into a military, like Wadar port, the Hambantota port will turn into a military, naval base, and so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, they have the military objective. But Quad has, to me, as I understand, it started with the alliance concept. It is not a sort of economy and military. They go hand in hand. That's fine. But the challenge is very real for the smaller countries. Where do you go? Japan, Australia, China, then USA, they're all very strong powers. Then where do we go, and how do we select our friends and our I will not say rivals, but our friends and allies and partners and so on and so forth? That's a good question, and I think we need to discuss about that. That needs a separate discussion for that. But it's a good question, and I'll think about it, and maybe I'll try to write a paper on that. Thank you very much, Sajid. Thank you. Yeah, please. Thank you.
Dr. Nanda, do you have any comments on that, particularly on the second part of the question? Yes.
Yeah, no issues. I think that's exactly the answer and the very question that he has asked, how India has been able to balance. I think that's what I said there, that India believes that it is capable of doing this one. That's called the dehyphenation. If I am with SEO, that does not mean the United States needs to feel bad about it and start cursing us. Or I am with Quad, that the Chinese have to do that one. I think for all reasons, if there was no necessity, perhaps in the G20 there was no problem, or there was no necessity for India to take so much of pain to see to it there is a declaration, one for its own survival, and second, bringing something like an African Union. Now, perhaps that's the power that, or that's the state that India is enjoying as of now, because the feeling of being part of such grouping is perhaps not witnessed by others or not felt by others, but the African Union was able to do that. And I think that's where India is able to still be that. India wants to be in all these places. At the same time, India knows its priorities. India knows its limitations as well. India is not trying to overstretch itself, but at the same time, India is also not trying to keep quiet and then accept anything and everything that comes from. There where an assertive India comes into, but at the same time, someone who feels that he needs to do something, and it accepts, because for a long time, India has remained as a reluctant power. And even though it was trying to do something, we even called it as a reluctant philanthropist. There was an issue with regard to that, but it has overcome all those phobias. It has overcome all those issues. For a very, very long time, India had an illicit relation with Israel, and this was never spoken about, including the 1971, when a weapon consignment came, which was going to Iran, which came to India. India never spoke about this. We never made it public, but in the National Memorial Library, this was there as part of the archives. Australians spoke about it. I think now India has accepted that to be part of the reality. So India is shedding a lot of these baggages that it has been carrying for a very, very long time for no reason. That's the first part of the story. Now, second part of the story is very normal, because when the United States started pressurizing India to buy weapons from it, and India went on saying that its strategic importance are laying in, India doesn't have bombers. So India wanted S-400 in very clear terms. It is India's requirement. And India said that you cannot dictate terms to me. India has never lent its foreign policy, or it has never sublet its foreign policy to be operated by someone else. That's exactly what I meant to say strategic autonomy. It's been very clear that I will take care of my foreign policy. You please take care of it. When India kept on asking, don't fund Pakistan, don't give money to Pakistan, did the United States listen? If that is not the case, you cannot dictate terms to me that don't buy weapons from that, don't buy weapons from this. There where I also made a mention saying that India wants to be treated as an equal partner, not as a junior partner. I think that India has succeeded from the technological denial from the Johnson era to what it has been to Biden era. I think India has grown and India has shown what it is capable of. When the whole world wrote off that post-COVID-19, that there's going to be a massive economic crisis, there is something default and inbuilt in this country, the way we are growing economically. I'm not saying that we are doing phenomenally great. We have a long way to go. But at the same time, that clear-cut understanding of where we want to be is much more clearer here. And I really don't agree with the idea of the Asian NATO. India has never supported that. India will never support that one. This has been a discussion. My own guru, Professor M.D. Nalapat, has spoken so many times that there should be an Asian NATO. But we have never said that. India will never, ever do that one. That's the first part. AUKUS is like, as I mentioned, when India would go closer to Russia and buy something, you need something to arm twist, simply to say that we in this grouping are different from you. And then what it has led to, where is AUKUS today, what exactly it is doing, is all known story, where one need not actually deliberate about it at all. So I'm pretty optimistic about the way India is dealing at this juncture in the world affairs. I perhaps believe that it will continue to do, because it requires an amount of confidence. It requires an amount of clarity in what we are talking to. For a long time, we feared to say certain things to Europeans. We feared a lot of things to be told to other people. Now we are saying it. We are saying it because I think we are in that particular position, because beggars don't think itself one of those. And India thinks that it's speaking from the power position. India knows the responsibilities. India also knows its vulnerabilities. I think India's a simple statement is very clear. Don't overestimate yourself. Don't underestimate your adversary or somebody who's opposite to you. And that sums up India's foreign policy as of now. Thank you.
All right, that was good. I think we have a question from, yes, sir. Sir, please go ahead, sir.
First of all, I'd like to appreciate everybody for panelists and all for the excellent deliberations. I think you can all hear me.
Yes, sir.
I'm your Chief Marshal Mashir Zaman Senyavat, former Air Chief of Bangladesh Air Force. I'm a little confused about all the things that goes around in this world. We talk about international norms and rules and regulations, rule-based world, but we see all around that it is a double standard, or if close to a hypocrisy. Number one. Number two, if there is a world order where there is a United Nations which has given out some rules of, for example, the UNCLOS, and the persons or the countries who propagate or urge others to follow the international orders and rules, they themselves have not ratified that so long. There are some few countries. And again, we do not consider the other side's points of view. You see, what could be the interest of China? What could be the concerns of China? That is not highlighted here by anyone. I had been in China for 1 year. I have seen its people. They are very down to earth. So I also had been in India. I also had been in USA many times. I had been in Russia, where the Russian women would come and say, don't think that Russians are bad people. And I didn't have the coin to buy ice cream. She would buy me ice cream, a middle-aged lady. So you see, back to the ground, everywhere in the world, people feels that he is a good person. He or she is a good person. And I would like to feel that I'm also a good person. Nobody likes to be a villain, or nobody likes to be the bad guy, whatever it might be. So my question is, why not to come under one umbrella, that is the UN, and go away with all these things, whatever it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that profound thought. Anybody wants to make a comment on that?
All
right.
Since my Air Chief is talking, I'm from Bangladesh, and he's the Air Force Chief from Bangladesh Air Force. Let me respond in as short as possible. It's a good point, Air Chief Marshal Mashir Zaman. I think we worked together. Did you somewhere in DC or staff college? I don't remember that.
Sir, we had been many times together and different capabilities and places. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Great. Your point is valid. Your point is valid theoretically, altruistically, but that's not valid probably in real politics or power politics wise. UN is faltering, so to say. UN has two aspects. One is development aspect and another is security aspect. UN is doing fantastic in the development aspects. UN is good job in the Gaza Peninsula. It is providing the relief over there. UN is doing very good in the climate change. Fine. UN has gone to Nepal the other day, and the Secretary General was up the Everest and was trying to see the climate problem, the frozen, that ice frozen problem. That is fine. But the Security Council is a big barrier. What can you do? Nothing is working. There was a resolution, proposed by Russia, proposed by Latin American country, proposed by another country. Nothing worked. Nothing. It couldn't get through. So that's a big stumble now. Unless we reform the UN, sir, I tend to say that you have to reform the Security Council of the UN. That would be a fantastic idea. It's a fantastic idea. I wish we could do that. Now, even for UNCLOS, America talks about rule-based border. UNCLOS has not been ratified by America. America is always, trying to put blames on the Chinese, but America itself has not. It talks about the South China Sea, open and the open and the what is that called? The open seas and open sea lanes and so on and so forth. But America itself has not ratified the UNCLOS.
Open and free lanes
America has not ratified, even solved. So these are the real life problem. This is called real politics. This is power politics. This will be there always. So we have to live with that. But my suggestion would be to reform the UN Security Council right away. Do something about it. Let us do something about that. The whole world should come forward to that. Thank you, sir. I think somebody else can take on from there on. Yeah.
All right, sir. I think we are closing to a
Yes,
very
very
long
short
time.
probably, yeah.
Yes, sir. And with that high note and with that high sort of hope as well, we'd like to thank our distinguished panelists today, Dr. Muhammad Aminul Karim, Lieutenant General retired from Bangladesh. Admiral Awal, sir, would you like to raise a question or
Yeah,
something?
please give him the floor. Yeah, yeah. So I think
Yes.
give him 1 minute.
All right,
One
all right, sir. All
30
right,
seconds.
all right. Can you unmute, sir, Admiral Awal, sir? Can you unmute, sir? Please
Yeah.
unmute. Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Indu
Yeah.
is tired. Indu is like looking tired. So let's close
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Thank you. I raised hand
Very quickly,
long
sir.
time
Yes.
back.
Very quickly,
okay.
sir.
Yeah.
It's been
Thank
it's
you.
been
My
we've been doing two
my
sessions together. Thank you.
my question is to Dr. Nanda Kishore. It's about the Indian strategic autonomy you have mentioned and interaction with USA. And say, if you look at the Quad, there are three, allies and one partner. India is a partner with three distinct C. And then with the strategic autonomy, there is in such body, it is likely that there will be some moving part. But do you think that with this strategic, autonomy and this 3C and the way India wants to maneuver itself in the Quad, is it becoming a too distinct moving part? I'll mention one example. One American ship was passing through the Indian EEZ. So it was asked that, what are you doing? We are doing freedom of navigation patrol, as we do, from Malabar and all through. I don't know, it is my EEZ. It is a no-go for you with all the sensors. You can have a innocent passage, but not with your sensors. The Americans bent on, no, it's a freedom of navigation patrol. We are partners. You are allies. No, we are not allies. We are partners. And with that, you see, with that example, do you think that it is becoming a very fast-moving part for the Quad? Thank you.
Dr. Jai, Dr. Kishore is not here, so Admiral, we will send your question to him. So
okay.
We will keep doing this discussion. Dr. Jai, over to you, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And now very much, very hearty thanks to Dr. Muhammad Aminul Karim, Major General Binoj Basnyat, Dr. Sannia, and also Dr. Nanda, for being such a valuable contributor for this panel. And with that, for the final words, can I now hand over to Dr. Indu Saxena? Indu, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Jahid. So that was an interesting and insightful discussion, and hopefully we will do another panel for that. That the question that I have here again, that what we are at Indian subcontinent, that all the audience and participants are from the, so what India and Pakistan can do to benefit this Indo-Pacific construct in favor of the South Asia. So we will hopefully invite another panel soon. And thank you, everyone, esteemed speakers, participant audiences, our knowledge partners. Very thankful to all of you. And we have the two panels in evening, one on Pacific Alliance, one on Pacific Islands, and another is the student panels. So you are all welcome for those panels. The schedule is on our website. Please check it and register it and make the discussion going on. Thank you again. Have a great day.
Thank you.